Researchers in Germany have dropped an Apple vulnerability on us.
Hey, John, I think you have an interesting story to drop into our laps.
Yeah, that's bad, Stan. So if you have an Apple phone or an iPhone, or an Apple device, a lot of the Apple devices do the same thing. There's a feature called AirDrop. And what AirDrop does is it lets you transmit files, content, whatever, from a proximate device. So you go up to another similar device and say, hey, let's share this picture. You don't have to text it. You don't have to email it. You just connect it straight through Bluetooth. Well, what they're finding out is that these researchers, and I will butcher this name, it's in Germany. You can check this story out. My German is not the best. Have identified what they consider as a severe privacy leak in AirDrop. And so what happens is that it's kind of hard to explain, but there is an authentication that happens between two devices. And so essentially someone who is proximate to the two devices that are trying to share it can kind of get in there into that hashing algorithm and figure out what is going on, and then quickly, and it's kind of a relative term, figure out, I reverse engineer it, and then I can make myself part of that chain and actually kind of, I don't know if you want to say steal the information, but make yourself a man-in-the-middle type attack. The university there in Germany, I'm always a little leery when researchers come back and say, hey, we have this problem, we reported it to Apple or whomever, and they say, oh, and they didn't really address it. And so what we did is we developed our own little tool. Even though this is a college, and they're putting it out for free on GitHub or wherever, the fact that they developed another tool, I don't know, sometimes it makes me feel like you're marketing, that you are actually finding a security vulnerability. So I'm always a little leery when we start seeing solutions along with the vulnerability. And the other interesting, I think, aspect of this one is this is almost one of those, 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, the 18th, with, when the wind is blowing from the northwest and you got your legs crossed type issue. It's fairly difficult to exploit. You have to, you think about this, I have to be proximate to two people doing an AirDrop. And then in that seconds, those seconds to milliseconds, I have to brute force a hashing algorithm and then figure out, okay, once I've done that, what do I get? I get an email address. I don't get the content they're sharing. I get the emails and the phone numbers of those two people. So you're not necessarily, and there may be more to it. I guess you could probably take it a little further, but that's the primary gist of this vulnerability. So, you think about how to brute force hashes. How long does that take? You're not going to sit there. You're not going to sit there next to somebody with your phone or your computer or whatever, and while they're sharing files, and somebody's not going to recognize. You're going to know there's this person kind of watching you, or with a computer. So I'm not real, I guess, uncomfortable with this particular vulnerability, but it is something to think about from a monitoring perspective. Whenever you're sharing information, whenever you're connecting in an insecure location, keep an eye out on your background. What's going on around you, and just be cognizant of what might be happening.
The way I always think about these wireless technologies is, would I take that wireless technology with me to Black Hat or DEF CON? Am I taking this phone with the AirDrop feature turned on to DEF CON? And if I even think for a second that the answer is no, because there's somebody in Germany who came up with some unique way to do it, no, disable that, or definitely, be worried about it. This reminds me of something that I recently discovered as well. There's on my phone, there's a music playing app I use a lot, and all of our devices, they have Bluetooth turned on. And it's very easy to scan them. And I was actually just doing this for fun one day. And all of a sudden, when I was scanning my phone, the music app turned on and started playing whatever I had on there. And it's not like a big vulnerability, and it's not like a big deal. So what? Just by scanning, you're turning this on, and who cares? But it probably represents something like one of these trust relationships we were just talking about that possibly gets like violated, where you're like, you shouldn't be able to do that. Like, you shouldn't be able to scan my Bluetooth interfaces and turn on my music app from wherever I was listening to it before. So whenever I hear stories like this, it always makes me like a little bit nervous, because it's like, for me, it's one of those like smoke fire situations, like where there's a little bit of smoke, there's probably like a fire burning or smoldering at least of something possibly underneath. Anyway, like I think it's interesting, but definitely probably safe to continue using AirDrop. Probably, they won't get you depending how you use. But it's interesting because usually this kind of research builds on top of one another, and before long you have things like don't use web anymore because you can crack that in like a few seconds or a few minutes, and all of a sudden there's like a tool and a whole CTF around it. Can you decrypt the wireless password in this PCAP? So definitely something to be aware of, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stan. It's probably still safe to use AirDrop. I use it myself, and even if it gets exploited, I mean, my phone number and email, they've got to be somewhere on the internet already, right? Anyone with a skilled Google hand can find it pretty simply. But if you are concerned about it, I have heard some advice where go in and just turn AirDrop specifically off, and then when you need to use it, flip it on, transfer your files, and turn it back off. So if you're that concerned about it, it's kind of an easy solution. But again, how concerned should you be about it? I don't know. That's difficult to say.
Yes, I think a scale of 1 to 10, you're talking a 4 for the common person, maybe even less. I mean, personal opinion, obviously. And I'm like you, Andy. It's like if I'm nervous about what I'm sharing or what I could potentially share, you turn off things. You turn off the 2G radio. You turn off the Bluetooth. You turn off the Wi-Fi. You can turn this stuff off and on. There's a lot of controls that our phones, whether it be Apple or Android or whatever, have that people just don't think to enable. And so it's if you are one of those members of our audience, probably who are concerned, the best solution is just turn the stuff off you're not using, and you're probably even doubling or tripling your security.
I used to work at an Apple store long ago. And you'd be surprised how many people would come in with iPhones who have had iPhones for a while. I just have no idea what AirDrop even is. So I would imagine a lot of people out there, they either don't know what it is, or it's just some seldom used feature that they barely touch every now and again. And even myself, I do use AirDrop, but I use it maybe once every couple of weeks. So it's not like you've got to go in and turn it on, and then back off again, several times a day. And some people, they might think to themselves, I never use AirDrop. Why don't I just shut it off? Problem solved.
Yeah, I guess the ultimate, now thinking back to taking your devices to DEF CON, the ultimate firewall is a Faraday cage made out of tinfoil that you just wrap your phone in to make sure you never get hacked by anything. I guess until then, you can keep using your phone.
I think one of the reasons why this particular vulnerability or the story has gotten a lot of traction is because it's an iPhone. And I think just the user base is just so large that sort of any little thing that goes on with it, people want to know because there's so many people that have iPhones out there. I think that plays a role.